Do you have whips that just seem to take forever? Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, welcome to Karchermakes. I'm Andrea, a serial crafter here in South Central PA, and today we're gonna talk about forever whips. First things first, what is a forever whip? For me, it's a work in progress that I have really no deadline. There's no pressure to finish it. I kind of work on it when I feel like it, and it just kind of lingers on forever. I talked about in one of my prior videos that one of my goals this year is to completely finish at least one of these forever whips that you're gonna see today. Not real sure which one it's gonna be yet. If you have some feedback below, you have some suggestions, you like one better than the other that I should focus on, feel free, leave a comment. Let's talk about it. But the thing with forever whips really kind of comes back to how I am as a maker. And what I mean by that is makers tend to put themselves into two categories: process versus production. Production makers, they really crave that finished object. They really want, that's what motivates them, is the finished object at the end of the day. Then there's processors who are motivated by the act of making the object. And really that's where I'm at. I enjoy the process of making all of these things. I'm not motivated by having the end result. I know that sounds strange, but really that's what it is. I am really enjoying making the thing, and sometimes I'll wear it and I'll enjoy it and I'll use it, but for me it's the making part that drives me. That's where I get my gratification from. So when you combine that with the fact that I am a very slow maker, P.S. the irony of this shirt today, knit fast, dye warm. I don't knit fast, but I will dye warm. But I'm a very slow maker, and I'm also not monogamous. At any given time, I have 3, 4 plus active whips, and kind of the difference between, for me, an active whip and a forever whip. Again, a forever whip is it'll live in a bag and I'll pick it up when I feel like it. An active whip is something that I'm actively kind of working on as the days go by. A forever whip I may not pick up for months. An active whip, I'm working on that during the week. So you put all that together, and I do tend to have a lot of forever whips that we're going to talk about today. A lot of these are, actually all of them, all of these happen to be blankets, which that just dawned on me. That's interesting. All of these are blankets, so they're all bigger projects. So just by virtue of being a bigger project, they're going to take longer to work on. So they're all blankets. I have a mix of both crochet and knitting. I have a mix of free patterns and paid patterns. And a lot of these, if not all of them, really lend themselves well to stash busting, scrappy projects, leftovers, which I feel like that's my theme for the year. My theme for the year is using up all the scraps, and my last video, I'll link it. We talked about this. This is all going away. I will be using all of these scraps. It's happening. It is happening. 2024 is the year of the scraps. So let's get started and let's talk about these projects that just linger on forever. Let's start with the corner to corner crochet blanket. And I'm not using a particular pattern for this. However, I am using the Crazy Sock Ladies tutorial for making the magic knot balls. And again, like I mentioned, the video from last time, the magic knot ball contains all of the scraps of the scraps of the scraps. Every last little tiny bit of yarn that I have goes into a magic knot ball. that goes into this blanket. So I'll insert some footage here of a better look at it. But this is just a corner to corner crochet blanket, fingering weight, not held double. That would have made my life a lot easier in hindsight, but it's fingering weight. And these are just all sorts of leftovers that made their way into this, and I love it. This is a really great project for when you just want to sit and not think and just do some double crocheting for hours. This is the project for that. So the hook that I'm using on this and several other of the projects is from Polymer Clay Shed. They are on Etsy. And look how pretty this is. It's little bees and butterflies and flowers. So cute. And it's a size D. And I use this across multiple projects, which is also probably why none of them get finished, because I'm sharing materials here and never get to focus on just one. But this is the hook. So yeah, there's a lot of tutorials for this on YouTube for free. Pick the one that works best for you. If I can find the one that I did, I'll link it below. But this is just a great simple project. And if you're new to crochet, I highly recommend this, because at least the tutorial I watched was phenomenal. It was really great and made it very simple. And then you combine that with Kay's Magic Knot Ball tutorial, and this is just a great little project for all your little leftover scrappy scraps. Next up, let's talk about the Baton blanket squares. This is a free pattern by Sandra Paul, and like I mentioned in that scrap organization video, the leftovers for every fingering weight, sock weight leftover that I have, it becomes one of these little squares. And these take about 2 grams of yarn. At my gauge, they take about 2 grams of yarn to just whip together. I do weave in the ends as I go, because the thought of weaving in ends at the end of this with hundreds of squares is very daunting to me. So I'm doing it as I go. I'm trying to be good. But yeah, these are just a bunch of little squares. I don't know how this is going to end. So the pattern itself has you use like a plain white yarn and then make a checkerboard pattern, hence the Battenberg, because it's like a Battenberg cake with the little checkerboards. I don't know if I'm gonna do that. These may just get stitched together or crocheted together. But at this point, at last count, I did count these. I have well over 100, possibly 150 of these. So whenever I'm done making what I'm making with my yarn, I do a quick little square. It takes a few minutes, and it gets put in this basket. And one day it will be done. We will see. It'll get there. So the next project we have is the Summer Garden Granny Squares. This is a pattern. It's free, also free, by Addict24. And these are more crochet squares. And for these, I'm just using big box acrylic worsted, not fancy yarn. And I have 6 colors. I have 6 different colors, and my goal is to make as many different combinations as possible without repeating a combination, meaning unique center, second round, third round. And as is the theme of the day, I don't know what's going to happen at the end of this. I'm just making squares. I do have white yarn as well that may or may not border these at some point. So this project, though, although it's intended to be a blanket, I don't know if it's going to be a blanket. So if you're familiar with the Ariana cardigan by Amy Christophers, it uses basically squares, granny squares, and then you make a cardigan out of it. And the Karen Knits podcast, Karen made a really beautiful one out of some sock weight yarn. And when I saw that, I really got to thinking about this forever whip. Maybe instead of it going on forever, I take these squares and then I use Amy's pattern to make a cardigan. It's a thought. I don't know yet. We will see. But these are also very simple to make. It's just like a jazzier version of a granny square. It starts out as a circle and then you end up squaring it off, which is really fun. The hook that I use for these, also from Polymer Clay Shed, hashtag not sponsored. I just think these are really pretty. And the larger handle is easier on my hands to use. But this is a size G hook. So that is that project that may or may not get finished at some point in my lifetime. Okay, next up, and this may be, I don't know, did I say the corner to corner crochet one is my favorite? This one may actually be my favorite in terms of what the planned end result is going to look like. I love this blanket. This is the Crochet Northeasterly by Katie Stevens. And I'll insert a better piece of footage here. But this is the Crochet Northeasterly by Katie Stevens, and it's a crochet version of the Northeasterly blanket by Skinanigans. And the way I chose to do it is rainbow, kind of rainbowy order. And I interchange with just bare yarn, the plain white yarn, and I think it is phenomenal. These little like chevron arrows, I love it. I love how this is turning out. And again, this is a great project if you have scraps, leftovers, stash, you want to bust your stash, phenomenal project for that. And as a bonus, if you're not a crocheter and you like this, there's a knit version. So definitely check that out. But super fun project. I love it. It's going to be amazing. Okay, up next, we have a lot of these squares. So these are my pinwheel blanket squares. It's a paid pattern by Mina Phillip. However, if you go into Ravelry and you just search for, or even YouTube, right? You search for pinwheel blanket squares, you will get more options, some of which are free. So, and it's all in how you interpret the pattern. It's a fairly simple pattern. I chose to use the Knitting Expats version because I wanted to have more experience with this type of short row that she includes. So these are all of my hand-dyed yarn. Once upon a time, I was an indie dyer. I had my yarn on Etsy. I had it in 2 different local yarn stores that I had wholesale accounts with. And then I got a new job at work and couldn't just take the time to dedicate to the business that I wanted to. I didn't have the time to do the way I wanted to do it. So unfortunately, I had to stop dyeing, but I still have a lot of that stock left. And the way I did my yarn is that for each colorway, I made a mini as like a reference skein so that I could color match a little better. And I had so many of them that I was like, I need to find a project that I can use all of these minis in. And this is a great one. This is a really great one. And again, it's a paid pattern, but there's free versions. So just like with everything else that we're looking at here today, one day these will all get sewn together. I don't know if I'm going to put a border on them, but they will one day become, hopefully, a giant blanket that is also quite beautiful with all my hand-dyed yarn. I think that's fun. So for this one, this is a project that you've seen. If you're a returning viewer, you've seen this several times. This is my little baby stack of pinwheel, not pinwheel. This is my stack of log cabin squares. And for these, I'm trying to do a square that includes yarn from one dyer. So like all of these are from Rising Tide Fiber Company. And this is the latest one. This is not blocked, by the way. But this is all yarns from Nitty Gritty Fiber Arts, which was last month's Row 1 mini subscription dyer. So yeah. So in terms of a forever whip, because of how I'm making these, number one, I need to collect enough yarn from one dyer to be able to make the square. And dyers that sell like the little mini skein sets, that makes it very easy for me. So I try to pick those up when I can. But I also have started incorporating Row 1 minis into this just because I have so many of them. And if you guys are interested in another video where I review the subscription service, just let me know, leave a comment below. But yeah, so all of these will eventually, just like everything else, one day get sewn together and become probably a blanket, maybe some other kind of finished object. But what's interesting with these, and I didn't notice this until I was collecting everything and getting it ready for this video, is that they are the same size as the pinwheels. So it got me thinking, maybe I make a project that includes both, and then that will increase the likelihood of me finishing it sometime soon. So we will see. Maybe you'll be surprised. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe so that you can see what the end result is of all of these forever whips. So those are all the forever whips that I have for you today. I really want to finish one this year. That is my goal, at least one of these. We just went through, what, like 6 different projects. I just want to finish one, and that will be amazing. If I can do more, even better. But I at least want to finish one, get that off the needles or hook, and hopefully enjoy the finished object. And there's no shame in having forever whips. You're the boss of your making. Make what you love. If you love just the process of casting something new on, and that's what really sings to your heart, by all means do it. Don't let anybody try to intimidate you about, oh, well, you know, you have all these whips and nothing ever gets done. Look, that's what makes you happy, and that's what matters. So hopefully you found this helpful. Maybe I introduced you to some new kind of patterns that you weren't familiar with. If you have a forever whip, let me know what that is down below. I'd love to hear more about it. And until next time, happy making.